Actually, that first year, maybe 18 months, we had, WPP and Publicis came in as clients, partly because I think they were running from the big law cost, because everybody was struggling because of the crisis. So that sort of played into our hands, and I just got a bit lucky. And I was in an elevator in my building holding a kilt, because us Scottish people, we wear kilts to these events, right? And drink whiskey and talk about haggis and stuff. I'm like, I'm going to this Scottish society, whatever, tonight. And he's like, oh, he's an English guy. And he's like, oh, I did all the whiskey accounts years ago, and now I'm at WPP. We should get a pint or whatever. And we're all big football fans. You always have that in common, the soccer, right? And then we get together, and several Guinness later, he's like, you know what? I use this big firm. They don't care about me at all. I think we're still going to start using you. And I'm just like, well, this is a bit of a great, lovely. And I've got like an assistant and a kind of set up cardboard law firm with not a lot going on, but he trusted me, and people give you their trust, and that's a beautiful thing, And at that point, your learning curve is basically on crack cocaine, because you are like, you can't F up.
Today, we're delighted to have Allan Rooney of Rooney Law on the program, who's got a lot of experience in various spaces, agency-related and otherwise, but a really cool story about brand building, and really excited to hear from you today, Allan, so thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. This is really fun. A little break from the norm.
So I know you've been on other podcasts. I've heard a bit about your story, and we don't have to go into an extreme level of detail, but I know a lot of your journey coming to this country, starting your firm, has been shaped by persistence, some degree of luck, but I'd love to just hear a little bit about some of that, and a little bit about your background as well for our audience who might not know you.
Yeah, look, we can get into more detail or get the whole sordid life story, but I think you made the point about tenacity, and I was thinking, what's a good example of that? There's probably quite a few, because I think that's an important quality in business, right? And but my personal story started kind of in America, really, when I was studying law in Scotland, and I'd always obviously watched the movies, loved American film media. In my era, it was the A-Team and everything else growing up, and just loved it, and was always fascinated by coming to the country. And there was an opportunity to come and study my third year. So it's weird over there, right? It's undergraduate law, so you're doing this 4-year undergrad degree, right? And your third year abroad is a common thing. People go to France because they're doing law in French, or they're doing, whatever. They go to Spain. There was two North American options. One was McGill in Montreal, and one was the University of Texas. The problem was my grades weren't that great, and they only took the top 3 graded applicants, and I was like the 4th guy, right? And like a lot of people, I'm sure, I was pretty bright kid in high school, had all A's, had my pick of kind of university, college. But you get to college and suddenly you're kind of bang average, right? And that was something that happened to me. And I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to get in. My friend's like, well, going to give up on that. You're just going to be here next year. What are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm not giving up that easy. So I called up a professor at the University of Texas. This is probably sometime in early 1997, I think. And I get on the phone with some lady. I actually forget her name now. I feel bad. Professor. And she's like, who is this? And I'm like, well, I'm Allan Rooney. And I had a bit more accented, I think, back then. Maybe that I am now. It's a bit lighter, 25 years in America. And she's like, who is this crazy guy calling me up? And I was like, look, I just thought that, I really want to come. And if I noticed last year you only took one person, so in a way you kind of owe us a couple of spots, And she was laughing, and she was like, all right, I'll get back to you, whatever. And I'm thinking, hey, it was worth a try, right? So it was basically a cold call, and all of us who got our own business have done sales, right? And I got an email through to my director of studies, as they call them. It's like a guidance counselor at the university. If Mr. Rooney is as tenacious in his studies as he is in trying to gain admission to the University of Texas Law School, he'll be a credit to our law school. And I'm like, all right, I'm in, right? And so I get prepped, and over I come that August, and I remember landing in Houston, going out with my trolley or cart with my bags, and going straight back in, because I'd never felt heat of that magnitude in my life. It was like 107, feeling total humidity. I was like, I can't survive here genetically. I don't think. But we got used to it, obviously. But that was Texas, and that was the start. And it was that kind of, what's the cut of your jib? You're going to ask. You don't ask, you don't get. And I think, and we'll get into that issue more, obviously, as we chat. But I thought that it kind of goes back to the origin, right? And just to glossing over though, did that year, went back to Scotland for a year, finalised my degree, and managed to get an opportunity to get a job in New York from 1999. So that's when I get to the city.
Yeah. And jumping a little bit ahead, but can you just tell us a little bit about your firm? I know it's glossing over lots of history, but how did you start your firm, and what do you do, and where is it now?
Well, I'll talk about what we do first, and then there is a bit of a backstory to why I started the firm, as you might know if you listen to that other podcast. I basically, what we are is effectively a business boutique law firm aimed at businesses, right? So we're a B2B outfit. We'll cover corporate, M&A, employment, tax, equity compensation, intellectual property around trademark and patent. We do real estate. We do dispute and litigation. We do fundraising, the sort of Series A, Series Bs you read about, tech-backed, safe note rounds, whatever. And we've got a lot of New York and US-based clients. One of our sort of calling cards is we help a lot of overseas businesses come in. So a lot of times that company might be headquartered in London or Ireland or Australia are probably our three biggest markets. The UK is the biggest one of inbound. And we've helped now 300 companies come in about 20 years. So it's a lot. Yeah, I've done a lot of that. So, and you kind of learn as you go. But that's what we do. And maybe we'll get to before the firm. But you want me to go back to the founding of the firm?
Yeah, just like we've heard up to, you've gotten to New York, you've got opportunity there. Why did you decide to kind of go out on your own and start your own thing?
It's a good question. So I I go to a big place called Deloitte, obviously the big accounting firm, and they were good enough to get my visa. They paid for my bar exam course. I get through the bar exam, first time, I'll have you know, and I managed to pass it. And then I met this thing at Deloitte, and it's international kind of tax law. Not really my personality fit, as you can imagine. Go in that cubicle, read the tax code and stuff. It was hard. I could do it, but I was really struggling with but I learned a lot. There were some good people there. But right when I started, just about 9/11 happened, right? So that was effectively a recession in New York City for the best part of a year. And we got relocated to a hotel in Times Square where we had to work, which was pretty depressing, to be honest. The Marriott Marquis it was, and we all were in hotel. There was 3 of us in every hotel room. They took the beds out and they put desks in. One guy committed suicide actually one day.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, it was awful. So that was tough.
Did you guys get room service at least?
That's a great question, Michael. And we did not. I don't think it was in the budget, and I had to go back and complain. But funnily enough, I remember 9/11 is actually when they gave us a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone before that, and they were like, "Here's a cell phone in case there's another emergency team." And that's the number I have to this day, because we were right downtown. I was there that morning. It was awful, but that happens. I can't really lateral out and get a new job that easily. I've got kind of the weird background. Okay, I've got the bar exam now, but I'm LLB from the UK. It's not a JD. What is this guy? I got hired by a boutique firm where the guy had been at a pretty fancy law firm called Sullivan and Cromwell, and he started his own business in the late 80s, actually. I get there in like 03 or so, and he trains me all in litigation, right? So I'm going to court, I'm doing all this stuff, and suddenly I'm like, I kind of like being a lawyer, actually. This is fun. I'm relevant to clients. I'm enjoying it. They need my help. We're trying cases, which is pretty cool. And do that for a while. Sorry, they're getting a long answer. Apologies.
How similar to Suits is it? How similar was your job to Suits?
I mean, I think it's a little less glamorous. We did have a nice view. We had a 42nd floor panoramic midtown view. That was nice. It wasn't as modern or swanky as what's his name again? Harvey's office, right?
Yeah.
all us lawyers watching Suits, you're always a bit like, well, that's not true. That doesn't actually happen. Like, for example, they're always like, oh, Scotty's non-compete or whatever, and that's not a thing. You can't have a non-compete in the law business, interestingly. So they do make up some stuff, but it's a very entertaining show, right? And so it was some moments were pretty cool like that, I guess, but I was learning, but I'd taken a pay cut to leave Deloitte because it wasn't really something I was enjoying. And I moved, and nothing against Deloitte, it's a great firm. I moved to this place that I really liked it, but I took a pay cut. And the gentleman there, at one point or another, I said, look, I was just trying to pay the rent and, take girls on dates and pay for a few beers after soccer with my buddies. I played a lot of soccer. And, it wasn't like fancy tastes or anything, but I could barely get by. And he said, look, well, if you bring in work, we'll give you a percentage, right? So he effectively had a commission structure if you were able to source legal work based on, I forget, 20% or something like that, which is quite generous, actually. But because I don't think anyone had done it before. They'd actually gone and got work, you know what I mean? Which is also quite hard to do when you're like mid-20s. You don't really know what you're doing. There's a lot less of this. And you've got your network of your pals, your buddies, mates. No one's got a position of influence, right? We're all peons at some organization because we're in our mid-20s. And but I managed to get some stuff. Like my buddy was a real estate broker. He'd flick me closings, co-ops and condos. And then remember getting some people's wills and estate planning because we had a pretty full service firm there that I was an associate. They call it an associate when you're not a partner. You're a more junior lawyer. So I was doing that and I started sourcing this work and I had maybe a couple 100,000 of business coming up to like, 29 or so. It's 06, 07. In 05, sorry to go into more detail, I'd bought a brownstone with my buddy because back then you could borrow anything because it was before the credit crisis. And he had a bit of capital from a family trust and I had a reasonably okay steady income. So we buy this brownstone and we're turning it into condos because we're in real estate now, right? we do that. I learn a ton doing that. Architect, contractor. We make all the mistakes, but it was really fun. And we were very lucky because we sold those condos right at the beginning of 07, right before it all went to hell. And for the first time in my life, I had a little bit of money. I had, a couple $100,000 in the bank. And I'm like, God, it went pretty well. I'd never had any liquidity ever prior to this. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. But unfortunately at work, things weren't going so well because when you reach the end of your H-1B visa, which is quite a common visa for professional workers, you only have 6 years. And then you have to be sponsored for a green card if you're going to stick around, or you green card wedding or whatever you're going to do. But, you've got to get sponsored. And the firm, unfortunately, declined to sponsor me because the prevailing wage determination of the Department of Labor was, look, a lawyer in New York, 5 years experience, whatever, that's some 100 and something thousand, right? They were actually paying me a lot more than that when you figured in my commissions, right? The percentages I was getting. But they're very conservative guys and they're just like, we can't do that. Your clients might all melt away and stuff. Looking back to that moment, I'm like, oh my God, if I had a 29, 30-year-old lawyer who was like shown an aptitude to go and source business, you'd be like, you want to live in my house? What do you want me to do to keep you? You're great. You know what I mean? So like, it was like, an interesting decision, shall we say. But again, no offense. They were then cool and I'll tell you why. That was a bit of an unfortunate thing. I'm looking at jobs in London and Hong Kong and Australia and stuff, and I really don't want to leave. I've got my buddies. I've got a little bit of business. I'm loving New York City. I'm a single guy, which, as we all know, in New York City is a pretty fun thing to be. And it was very, it was just very unfortunate, and I was scared and I didn't know what to do. But a buddy of mine, and it's such a long answer, I'm sorry. A buddy of mine said to me, she was an immigration lawyer, Irish lady, and over a cheese and wine reception or something, I'm out there kind of networking as usual. And she's like, well, why don't you take the money from the condos, park it in a law firm and do an investment visa in the US, which is an e-visa. I'd never heard of them. We now do them for clients all the time. So that is a British investment visa under the treaty between the UK and the US. Ireland has one, France has one. So you can do that. And the premise, of course, is that you're going to make money in America and hire people and have growth. And that's good for the US, right? And for that purpose, they'll grant you the visa. So on a wing and a prayer, we put this thing in and we get approved for this e-visa. And then actually it was June 11th, next week, of '07 when I launched the firm and the salary stopped. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And it's next week. It's 18 years ago next week. 18 years ago next week.
Wow.
So I launched the firm to stay in the country is the short answer, which I should have given you. But it ends up being one of these things where you've got a fire under your you-know-what, right? So I had a bit of business. The guys, as I said, were then quite cool. They said, look, we'll kind of keep your associate office you have right now. Don't pay us any rent for a while. Build up some AR, some revenue, some billings out there aged, right? So you're not going to see cash day one. People pay 30 days, 60 days, whatever. Then we're going to start charging you some rent, low rent, and then we'll help you out on your matters because you're going to need our support on the stuff that you generate, which was true and quite good. They sort of incubated me. I don't think incubated was even a term back then. And what resulted from that, though, was I was out there selling a pretty broad offering of services from the beginning. I hadn't come out as like Allan the employment guy, Allan the immigration lawyer, Allan the corporate dude, so I kind of had, we're lawyers and we do this and the next thing. And so you could kind of pivot to what the client need was. And effectively, those guys did that for a while, and then we rented space, and then I hired more people and effectively just replaced them over time with our own people. And now we're in a few markets. So we were in London for a while. We've been in San Francisco, Chicago, got a small presence. It's not big. We're mostly in the New York area. And we do, stuff all over the country, really, to the extent it's allowed. There's certain things you can't do in different states if you're not barred. But yeah, it's been a hell of a journey. And that first year, I was like, if I could just do 150 grand, 200 grand, keep the lights on, right? And we broke $1 million that year, right? So I was like, wait a minute. This actually, maybe we can make some money doing this and have a good business and do good work and have fun. And actually that first year, maybe 18 months, we had, WPP and Publicis came in as clients, partly because I think they were running from the big law cost because everybody was struggling because of the crisis. So that sort of played into our hands, and I just got a bit lucky. And, I was in an elevator in my building holding a kilt because us Scottish people, we wear kilts to these events, right? And drink whiskey and talk about haggis and stuff, and sing songs. But I'm like, I'm going to the Scottish Society, whatever, tonight. And he's like, oh, and he's an English guy. And he's like, oh, I did all the whiskey accounts years ago, and now I'm at WPP. We should get a pint or whatever. Great. And we're all big football fans. You always had that in common, the soccer, right? And then we get together, and several Guinness later, he's like, you know what? I use this big firm. They don't care about me at all. I think we're still going to start using you. And I'm just like, well, this is a bit of a great, lovely. And I've got like an assistant and a kind of set up cardboard law firm with not a lot going on. But, he trusted me, and people give you their trust. And that's a beautiful thing, And at that point, your learning curve is basically on crack cocaine, because you are like, you can't F up. You don't have a boss above you. You don't have the protection. You screw up, you lose the client. So it brings your quality level and your learning curve just up. And I didn't know everything, but you were trying your best, put it that way. And they were getting the best of you, as they deserve to get, because they're paying decent hourly rates for our skills and our brains and our experience. And we need to give clients our best. I truly believe that. Anyway, wow, talking too much. Next question.
Wow, that's an awesome journey. Well, thanks so much for that. I think a question I have is, so you've really taken in a broad range of clients too, right? Like,
yeah, correct.
From fashion to marketing to tech, like all those different things. What do you think is the thing that's changed the most about law over the past 5 years in terms of their legal needs?
It's a really good question. You sort of see evolution, and obviously new laws come in. They have to comply, not comply. We've seen, obviously, some people are relying on AI more now for some internal stuff, or double checking maybe what a lawyer's saying. We're trying to leverage AI. Everybody is trying to figure that out, right? These waves of technology let's go back to the ad business, right? Because we've done, you're right, Michael, we're across a lot of industries, and we've done business in most sectors, I'd say, and helped clients. I mean, the truth of the matter is that the employment work for the widget business isn't that different from the employment work for the other business. But, clients usually want to hear, you've represented companies that do what they do, even though that may be largely irrelevant for the legal question in play, but you're going to tell the people what they want, right? And talk about the clients that you've had in that area and hone your pitch. And so advertising and media and marcoms is probably arguably our most credible space because we've done them probably the most. And you look at the evolutions, Michael, there you went and you started out and it was like print and media, and then it was, TV, radio, the traditional mediums. Suddenly digital comes along, online first, then mobile takes off in a big way, then programmatic, and all that stuff. Now the waves of AI, blockchain a few years ago, it's all shifted the marketplace. And then we had a great blockchain client for a while, and unfortunately they went out of business, right? But they were one of our better clients for a few years. So I'd say the change is interesting is all these new trends, and we have some repeat clients year to year they've had for many years, but things change year to year. Like M&A in 21, 22 was massively busy, right? You couldn't find a lawyer with a pulse to sell your business, buy your business. Fundraising was hectic. Then in 23, the market just went woof, and the COVID kind of sugar rush wore off, right? And then, so those changes, you're in it with your clients, they're pivoting, they're laying off now. Litigation's back, right? We're seeing right now trends like, the tariffs is increasing the interest of the inbound companies we help because they're like, oh, we better get over there and kind of set up shop and look a bit more American or something, right? So that's a trend. I mean, you see, there's also like trends around, you see like things happening in the, because I love business too, right? That's why I love what I do, because your client's coming to you and saying, this is what I do. And he's like in precision engineering or medical technology or something, and you're learning this new business little niche you'd never heard about before, which is so interesting, right? And they said, they might say, actually, we've got 2 sales guys in New York who are doing great, and we do all the work in the city of Leeds in Northern England, right? Those salaries are a hell of a lot lower than New York, right? And it's pretty good work and it's pretty good talent. So those guys are actually doing a bit of an arb there, right? They're getting American deals and they're doing all the legwork here in the UK, which is maybe what Trump's on about, right? That kind of stuff, and it's interesting to see that, but offshore's been a thing for a long time, right? But yeah, I'd say you're going to see trends that people are wrestling with. Privacy's evolving, to the extent, the lobby dollars are not making it go away. You know what I mean? There's all these conflicting things, right? And the market, the M&A market is kind of okay. That's going along. We're seeing an uptick in dispute right now, litigation stuff, which we do also as well. So, and we kind of operate, and I really enjoy operating as kind of general counsel. So the client's kind of like, well, you're the legal guy. What do we do? Right? And you're like, all right, well, we need a guy in Arizona, we need to do this. So I quite like quarterbacking those things. And sorry, I kind of jumped all over there, Michael. Did that sort of answer your question?
No, yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
I'm curious about your brand, and because you touched on this a little bit when you were talking about the starting of your firm and meeting that guy in the elevator and getting that big account. I know Michael and I have had a lot of experiences like that where there's almost like an imposter syndrome moment. You're like, okay, I hope they don't figure out that, I'm still living in my parents' basement right now and I'm just pretending that I'm doing this. But you mentioned something about the customer service angle. Like they're not getting the attention from their bigger firm that they were getting from you. I'm curious about your brand identity as a through line to the present day. Is that still what differentiates you? Have you evolved what your differentiators are now? And I'm sure our co-colleague Frank from Purposeful Advisors had a key role in making you guys stand out as well. But I'm curious about that brand identity journey.
Yeah, well, I think Frank's been a big part of the brand evolution since he came on. So Frank operates as our fractional CMO, as you guys know, and he has a great background in PR, marcoms, and stuff like that. And he was like, came on about 7 or 8 years ago, I think. I think he's muted right now, but maybe he'll kick me on the chat or something. But we've definitely taken that to the next level with Frank's help, I hope. I think we punch above our weight a little bit in our digital presentation, and we try and be very active voices on LinkedIn and stuff. I got a pseudo viral one the other day because my mom bumped into Rod Stewart in a like soap and perfumery in the south of France, right, where she lives in the south of France. And she walks right up to him, my mum, and she's like, you know my son, Allan John Paul Rooney? He's an attorney in New York, right? And of course, nobody calls me Allan John Paul Rooney except my mother. And the fraud steward has no idea who I am, even though I have met him several times. But, he's no way he remembers me, but he's a real sweetheart. And he just says to my mum, oh yes, I'll remember him. You know what I mean? And it was it made her day. But I posted that on LinkedIn, and it was like, boom, and loads of likes, and over 150,000 impressions, I think. And it was just like amazing how people connect with people, right? Is the point of the story. And we can Frank does all these wonderful articles for us, clever issues and trends in law, and you get 10 likes if you're lucky, and it's like mostly your family members and buddies. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, I don't know, brand wise, we have that positioning as a sophisticated boutique, right? We like to think we can go toe to toe with the big firms. When we're on transactions, often the other side might be a Latham or a Cleary or whatever, but we also don't really compete with them. We get a lot of referrals from large law firms, as I was saying, where they say, look, it's not really the right fit for us, in terms of the transaction size. So just being that steady pair of hands and trustworthy, it takes a lot of time to build that trust. For a lawyer, we partner a bit with Davis Polk, right? And they're like, for us, I did the bar exam with one of those guys, right? That's how far it goes back. And got to know his partners over the years and whatever. And they're like, well, who do you trust for the smaller stuff? Go to Allan, he's great. And we've showed up for all those years, and we've done a good job. And there's no more goodwill building thing than repeat customers and referrals, right? We all know that. We all want to amplify that and go digital and maybe do AdWords. But the truth is, for us in a B2B marketplace, I think we'd have to spend way too much on SEO and AdWords, and the quality of the leads, and someone's got a full-time job sifting that probably. Anyway, I think it's that, and giving out of our best, and trying to be as business savvy and see the practical side. I mean, I think we have a slogan on the website, but it's like doing things efficiently. And like when someone comes in to you and says, okay, Bob's left and he's stolen clients, we have to sue him. And you're like, oh, really? How many clients? And like, well, at least one or two we know about. And I'm like, well, how much are those worth, annually, would you say? And they're like, well, probably 30,000. And I'm like, look, we initiate a temporary restraining order lawsuit this month, you're going to be at $100,000 in legal fees, and there's a good chance you'll lose, because judges do not like these things in New York, right? And the person goes, oh, okay, maybe you're right, but they come back to you because like, well, that guy told me the truth, didn't he? Didn't just take my money and do a lawsuit. You know what I mean? I think a lot of it comes down to personal brand integrity, do the right thing, help people. We get a lot of inquiries, job-seeking attorneys. A lot from overseas find me somehow, and you try and give them the time, and funnily enough, like 10, 15 years later, some of those people are like doing you a favor. It's a long game. On the brand, I think it's like capable but bespoke, nimble, cost effective, right? You're not going to be charging the big law firm fees. That said, we're not the cheapest firm in New York by any means, but we're showing a joined up solution, giving them a full service offering, right? I think if you went to like a solo lawyer, they can do some stuff for you. They could be great, but they're not going to be able to do it all. They don't know the tax, they don't know the this, they don't know the that, right? But I don't know. I've always struggled with what my old coach. He would always say, "What are we building?" And I'm always like, it's a hard question. I'm just going. I don't know. You know what I mean? And I sort of, it's just sort of an evolution, I suppose. And it's and you have good days and bad days, and you have successes and failures, and things go wrong at times, and you get rejected all the time. But you got to just get comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's something certainly we can relate to. Getting comfortable with is par for the course in running your own shop.
Well, a month into running the firm, talking about fake it till you make it, right? I go to an event at a large law firm, and it's my it's this big firm, and this friend of mine as a partner, they invited me to like a drinks thing. He's like, come and network, meet some of the people. I'm like, okay, great. I just realized I'm actually using my coffee cup of my buddy's law firm. That's really a fail. Frank, you need to slap me. That's Pete Reed Law down in Austin, guys. Good guy. So he where was I with this? Oh, so I go up to this thing, and I'm running a bit late, which is not uncommon for me. And I'm like, ding, ding, ding. And this beautiful Latin-looking woman comes to the door, tall, in a kind of lovely sundress, and I'm sort of like, oh, hang on a minute. But I obviously there for professional purposes. I'm like, hello, I'm here for the networking event, and she's like, well, it's kind of over, it's kind of late. I think the guacamole's black already. I don't know why you'd come in, And I'm like, well, let me just say hi to this guy Bill, thank him for the invitation, maybe have a glass of wine. She's like, no, really, I think it's kind of late, and I'm like, please, and again, a bit of persistence, right? And so she opens the door, So I think 18 years later, we have 4 boys, and she's I thought she was Brazilian or something when I met her, and then she actually is. Her mom and dad came from Puerto Rico. She's a Brooklyn gal, so we're Puerto Ricans in our house. We have 4 boys, but that was a month in. She's like, I should never have opened that door. You know what I mean? And she was like, I knew you were full of shit. You didn't have any clients. And I was like, all right, great. But maybe she saw potential. I don't know. But that's that. So I forget the question you asked now. Sorry.
All good. There were certainly times when Michael and I were, got an introduction to some big agency partner or something, and we went into the building and we were kind of simultaneously asking them for advice, but also trying to figure out if there was a way that we could do some work for them somehow. And there was one point where a guy just said, like, what are you doing? Are you asking me for advice, or are you trying to pitch me on work? And we're like, we don't really know. Trying to get an opportunity, but man, yeah, I think it's a continual learning process. That's for sure.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. And the hard sell doesn't work. We all know that.
Well, so what is something, I know that you work with a lot of creatives as well and founders who build things from absolutely nothing. What are some legal blind spots that you see patterns like that as people are building from scratch that they often miss?
Good question. So first, I'd say I always enjoy those, like dealing with owners and founders as a fellow founder and entrepreneur. There's just a sort of simpatico there, I think, where you're kind of starting in second gear with each other. You guys have your own business, I have my own business. You know what it's like. We got employment issues. You got to fire someone. You got this. You got that. You know what it's like when the phone's not ringing and there's a payroll the next day. And I think that is a fairly not unique. It's a certain mindset. Not everyone can get comfortable with that. It's a lot of people. I'd never set my own business up. Are you crazy? Now, obviously, I was forced to, so here we are. But anyway, on that, so going into boring legal things that they get wrong. I mean, sometimes they're formation documents. Sometimes the cap tables are all screwed up. Sometimes we're selling the company, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Jeff had 10% of the business. Forgot about that." And it's like, well, did you get a release? We're selling a company for $50 million, and it's like, we sort of did, and they used their PEO, and the PEO gave them a crap form, and it was like the release didn't really talk about the stock, and we're like, oh Christ, we've got to mop this up now. I'd say also, it's very, very true, even though it sounds self-serving, that to have a lawyer sort it for you up front is always much, much, much cheaper than sorting it out later when you're in deep water, right? And that's totally true, and I've seen it time and time again. So other blind spots, did you get your trademark? Are you trading as something that might infringe someone out there and you don't know about it? You didn't do a search. Suddenly you get T-boned with a cease and desist lawsuit, right? And then the Lanham Act or trademark statute has double damages, attorney's fees, disgorgement of profits, and you're like, oh my God, this arsenal of weaponry, right? So some people are oblivious to that, and it can be expensive. I mean, usually you just settle those, change your name, but it's still, you never want uncertainty if you can button that up. And then, yeah, look, I mean, what else is a good one? I mean, the American with Disabilities Act surprises a lot of people, especially the foreign companies coming in. They're like, a lot of times there's these law firms that basically their business is all they do is sue people for having a website that doesn't comply with visual impairment rules. And you get stuck with this thing, and again, the statute has fee shifting because it's a discrimination statute and stuff, and he's got to sort it and settle basically. So that's the law firm business model for these guys. I mean, everyone's entitled to make a living. I'm not going to cast aspersions, but that's a thing, right? You hear about patent trolls, that kind of stuff. So I think, people don't see that one coming. Tax, they often don't plan right for tax. You know what I mean? one of the biggest unknown secrets is like the QSBS system in the US, right? So if you set up a business, it's a corporation, C Corp, hold it for 5 years, and it's sort of tech services isn't tough to get qualified, but if it's sort of tech or something, your first 10 million when you sell it is tax free at the federal level, right? And a lot of people don't know anything about it, but like, you know, venture funds are all over it. Founders that know or have good advisors know about it. But if you don't set yourself up for it, you don't optimize your tax result, right? So tax is all about planning. What are the rules? What's going to happen in the future? Don't know. Keep it flexible. You know, so tax stuff, people want to give equity a lot in companies, right? So like, oh, I want Jeff to have 5% of the business. He's key here. But they don't actually do the paperwork, right? So you go to sell the company. Jeff's paying ordinary income because Jeff doesn't have capital gain treatment, right? So things like that. There's just like things that if you don't do it right, and I mean, nobody wants to talk to lawyers, right? We're expensive, they sue people, whatever, but like the fact is that the big companies all have these big legal departments and all these lawyers because you need them, you know, and it's important, and that kind of is a big thing of risk management. But yeah, I mean, those are, I guess, a few examples. I mean, a bad contract can really undo you, you know what I mean? We've had clients that had a distribution agreement, they were in goods, it wasn't tech, right? And had a terrible termination clause because nobody reviewed it, nobody marked it up. That was a legal mind and with experience, and they ended up in over $1 million in fees and litigation that we had to help them with. I mean, it was business for us, you know, it was good, but it could have been avoided with probably a $3,000 to $5,000 legal spend, and instead it was 7 figures. So like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, not good. So like, you know, I've had some crazy ones. I mean, like one, I won't go into detail because of the nature of this, but an overseas client, shall we say, was selling items in the US and charging sales tax, but not paying the sales tax. You know, and to the authorities, and you're like, I shut the door. And I'm like, you realize that's like orange pajama stuff, right? You know what I mean? And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, you need to get that sorted out. You know what I mean? Like, and you're just like, some stuff blows your mind. But yeah, that hopefully that was a few. Do
you find yourself in those types of situations, like making these people aware that are just like blissfully ignorant, or they are trying to figure out ways to navigate the system, or is it just kind of all over them?
I think it's mostly people are well intentioned. I don't think most people are trying to subvert the law, break the law. I think it's awareness often, more often. And there's bad people out there. Luckily, we've not come across much of that, or you get out of the situation as quick as you can. And we don't do criminal, we don't really do much white collar. We certainly don't do matrimonial. But you know, I do. Sadly, I get that call a lot. People do ask me a lot, like, "Hey, unfortunately, it's not going so well at home. Do you have a recommendation?" It's sad, but you know, it's the reality.
I was going to say the last question we have jotted down, but I've got several percolating in my head. Is you work in a field. This podcast is primarily for folks, entrepreneurs, folks that are building brands, and so I'm just curious to kind of unpack a little bit about more. I know you touched on it already, but like about the process of building your firm into a trusted brand name. Like, it's interesting to me. I know this is the case with a lot of law firms, but your name's in the brand name, obviously, and so personal relationship, I know, is kind of the like absolute main heart and soul. But like, how do you grow from that? How do you impart that to your team? Like, I'm just curious about what that process has been like, and maybe what takeaways folks that are in different industries can learn from you as an entrepreneur, less about kind of the industry itself.
Yeah, well, I will duck back into law for one sec. There's a guy called Bill Paulsonelli, and he built a huge law firm, $500 million revenue or something like that. And I think he was retiring a few years ago, and he was asked, I love this quote, and he's like, "How did you do it, Bill? Like, it's amazing what you've built, whatever." And he's like, "The good people I hired." Right? You know what I mean? It was as simple as that. And I think your question also goes to culture and that kind of exacting. Like, my boss, the guy I mentioned who I went to work for out of the big firm, he was so exacting. He was an excellent lawyer, to his credit. He was an excellent writer. and he just would tear new ones off of me if I had it wrong. You know what I mean? And I would go in his office terrified, having thought of 3 or 4 angles, and then he thought of a 5th angle that I didn't think of, and I'm like, shit, I should check that. But like, so he was, I was scared of him, but it was amazing training. You know, I think I'm not that kind of boss. I don't think you can be that kind of boss anymore. Like, I think that went out in the 90s, early 2000s, because people are a bit more sensitive, shall we say, these days. But he imparted that kind of work ethic and quality control, like, you know, attention to details. Like, this has a typo in it. Like, you're charging $700 an hour. How can it can't have a typo in it? That's unacceptable, right? Like, you know, so I think trying to have the quality of the product, trying to have the responsiveness, trying to have the business savvy around that. And I guess I've maybe attracted people that have stayed with me that have a similar mindset, right? And enjoy the work. We get, you know, we enjoy the international nature of it. We enjoy the hustle and bustle of New York City. We enjoy the M&A work. We like to be up against the big firm. It's fun. We know that we can be as good as them. We think we can anyway. But, you know, so that all, it's a pride thing in a way. Take pride in your work and give the best of yourself. And, you know, we try and live to those values, I suppose. And I think the growth, as organic as it may be, is out of the service people are getting and the referrals and the you know, the repeat customers and the people saying, you know, you set up a thing in America, says some London guy to his buddy in the pub, and he's like, well, call this Allan Rooney dude, like, pretty nice guy, like, he knows what he's doing. And that, you know, that kind of stuff is just a function of doing it for a long time and doing your best. You know, it's not rocket science, right?
Yeah.
But, and you know, I think it's be aggressive if you can. Always be looking for the sale and the next client. That's hard to impart in lawyers. Unfortunately, it really, for some reason, as a profession, we resist sales or business development, whatever you want to call it. And there's people that are great at it, but there's a lot of lawyers that don't want to go near it, which is a challenge for all law firms, I think. But it's not uncommon to have a boutique or a smaller firm that was built and spearheaded by one person, perhaps, and then they've hired a lot of people. And we're certainly looking for lateral partners. People want to come in and help us grow, increase our offering, where they could probably, you know, do better financially than they might at a place with a lot more overhead, because we're more entrepreneurial, right? We're actively looking at acquiring a practice or two right now, which is another way we're looking to grow. You mentioned, you know, how do you build from just yourself? And it's a good question, right? I'm attached to the bloody thing. You're right. And you're kind of, you know, a long time ago, I do some legal work here and there. Obviously I have some billable time, but I do not have a lot, because all my focus is really on BD. And I had made that decision over a decade ago. I was like, look, if I'm going to scale this, I need to be a CEO and a salesperson. That is how I do that. I can't be drafting contracts till midnight. I also have 4 kids and we like to travel, and I want to be at the soccer games, you know. So it's kind of my values as a dad a bit as well. And we give people a nice balance, right? We do good work. It's sophisticated. It's fun. Good colleagues. Have a good time and a laugh. Work hard when necessary. But they're not billing 2,200 hours a year, and they're also not paid big firm salaries, but they're paid, you know, respectable amounts. But they're able to balance that with, you know, one of our lawyers just had a baby, which is awesome, just came back from maternity. And as a parent, lots of us are parents of young kids in the firm. And like, if you're like, I'm at the bus stop right now, I'm just going on mute, like, nobody cares. Fine. Just get your work done when you can, you know? So I think good people are good people, and you can trust them at home, in their nightgown or in their PJs and or whatever, or if they're in the office. And one transaction we're looking at to acquire a practice actually will probably bring us back to an office. We've been ultimately somewhat virtual since COVID. Our lease expired in July of 20, if you can believe it. And we had like 20 something grand a month rent in Manhattan, panoramic views, had a beautiful corner office, all that stuff. Don't need it. Really don't need it. You know what I mean? It was nice. But and nobody really wants to schlep in 5 days, and that is changing. Of course, the market's bringing people back, so we'd like to probably hang on to that as a differentiator for talent. It's like, don't care where you are, mate. You know what I mean? As long as you're effective. You know, so we've now got people. We made a full-time hire in Chicago, 2 now, which we would never have done before COVID. You know, you're like, oh, this works remote. Law really does lend itself to remote pretty well. And then, apart from courts and stuff like that, but, you don't do closings in person really on deals anymore. Haven't for years. It's all PDF, DocuSign. But yeah, sorry, another long answer. Apologies.
No, that's totally okay. I know we're nearly at time here, and Michael, I want to give you an opportunity if you have any lingering questions. But one thing I want to ask Allan also is we try to, whenever we have guests on, give them the opportunity to kind of tell us a little bit about their firm and what makes their firm different. And so I'm curious, and we've been talking about your firm this whole time, but what do you think makes Rooney Law unique and special and desirable for clients? Just if you had to sum it up.
Well, I think I've probably touched on most of that already. It's hard to differentiate yourself. You're in marketing, you're in law. Like, there's a lot of us, right, in these sectors. I think are, sophisticated, all about the business, boutique, cross-border, very comfortable over borders, right? And I think those are probably the more unusual things at our size. There is a lot of law firm boutiques in the New York market. They tend to be litigation though. Like, there's not that many corporate boutiques in my experience. They're out there, but there's fewer. I think a lot of those successful smaller firms are litigation focused and maybe have branched out from big firms. But that's I'd say what it is. It's hard to truly say there's a uniqueness there, but those are certainly core values.
Makes sense.
Very cool. And I was going to ask, that actually ties into my question, which was, how often are you litigating, if you litigate at all?
Oh yeah, great. It's a great question. So, and most lawyers who know what they're doing would tell you this. Like, the vast majority of things settle. You probably know that, right? Like 98-90% of cases. Some things are arbitration, some things are court. It's extremely expensive to litigate. It's just so labor intensive in terms of hourly rates and lawyer time that it becomes, So we've got a few disputes going on right now. I'd be amazed if they go anywhere near a court because it just doesn't make any sense. Basically, both sides start getting bills. And they're like, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And they kind of like, we need to settle this. Can you make them an offer, make a demand, whatever? So most of that would resolve itself. Might go to mediation. That's usually a good way to sometimes end a dispute. We just had an employment case go to mediation and it's settled, thankfully. Client was very happy, actually. We're usually management side, so we represent the business, not the individual. And so we're litigating, but it's like counseling, pre-litigation, file a complaint, whatever. People will phone you up and say, like, I'm owed $300,000, and you're like, not a lot you can do. You know what I mean? Like, it really isn't. Like, you're owed $50,000, $100,000. I'd be like, look, we can do stuff, but it's very quickly going to eat into what you might get, right? And so you kind of need a dispute that's 7 figures or more to go to the mat on it. Practically speaking, talking about like New York rates, even a low New York rate for a litigator that's not an idiot would be $500, $600 an hour at least, right? So that adds up with motion practice, discovery, blah, 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 blah. So like the answer is the litigation that we typically do, we've had some larger cases, is what I call shoving in the playground, right? It's sort of like, I'm going to find nasty letter. We call it fog letter, fear of God letter, fog. And you're threatening this and that and the next thing, and everybody knows it should resolve, but you have to kind of bare your teeth. So that's it, Michael. That's the litigation front.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Before we say our goodbyes, Allan, is there anything else, kind of final words of wisdom or things that you'd like to impart? I know you had some notes on some of the questions ahead of time, so is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I mean, it was just really fun, guys. Thank you so much for bringing me on. I hope it was interesting for you guys, and all the entrepreneurs out there, owners, you're not alone, right? Like that, I think, have a go at it. Look, the worst that can happen is you fail, right? And that the great thing about this country is positivity, right? I don't know if you grow up American, if you realize that. There's a phrase from EO, which is a group that Frank introduced me to, actually, entrepreneur organization. I don't know if you guys know it. It's a bit like YPO or Vistage or something. But the phrase is, you can't read the label when you're in the jar. And I don't know if Americans are like, wow, this is such a great country. It's so positive. I know it's a weird time and there's a lot going on, but I'm a huge fan of the fact that we have that sky's the limit mentality in America. That is just so empowering and amazing. And it's unique. It's unique. It's the American dream, and I think I love that. It's really good. And I want everybody to just go for that. If it doesn't work out for you, you can always get a job. You know what I mean? Something will work.
How often do you get back to Scotland, Allan?
Around once every 2 years. We have a large concentration of London clients, so I'm in London, which is sort of home. It's obviously England, which is like twice a year or so. We were in the Highlands last year in Scotland, with the boys, which was fun. And yeah, we get back when we can, but there's other places to go, right? We just booked a break to Italy for the family in the summer, so I'm excited by that. Yeah. So we love travel. We do love traveling. That's a. I actually have a buddy who's built an incredible home in El Salvador, and we're going down there for about a week at the end of June, so that should be fun too.
Oh wow, that'll be amazing.
I joke that I'm going to El Salvador voluntarily. All right, so I guess we're wrapping. Good to see you guys.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us, Allan. Really appreciate it.